Alright, so welcome back, and in this clip we're going to create nParticles with emitter type as a volume. So we'll go inside the nParticles menu, and inside the create emitter use this option box and change the emitter type to the volume. Hit the option create, and now press the F to focus this, and this is basically the volume type of the emitter, and it has its own volume, and right now it's like a cube. So let's reposition this over here and play the timeline. And notice the way particles are emitting from this volume, but as we all know that these particles are still under the impact of the gravity, so select them inside the end particle shape one, ignore the solver gravity as if for now. Roll it back and play the timeline, and now you notice the particles are moving away from this shape or away from this emitter in all the directions. Let's select this emitter node and examine the cause of this. So the first thing is that in this case, when you're using the type as a volume, you don't have the basic emission speed attributes like previously we worked with emitters like omni as well as the directionals, and we used to control the values of the particles with the help of the speed. So in this particular case, when you're using the type volume, you need to control each and every settings under this, which is the volume speed attributes. And it's little more sophisticated, it's very handy, but it will give you at the end of the day more possibilities. Alright, now let's do one thing. What do we have first of all in volume emitter attributes? Well, once we pick the type volume, it will give you some other basic shapes. You go inside here and click shapes like sphere, you have the cylinders as well as the cone and the torus. And the good thing is that all of the other shapes are definitely can influence the overall behavior of the particles, but the good thing is that all of them are still handled with the help of volume speed attributes. So if you can master any one of them, you could able to handle any other different type of volume shape. Alright, so let's take out this basic, which is the cube only, and now let's dive into the volume speed attributes. So right now we have the away from center. So because of this attribute, these particles are moving away from this volume cube. Let's change this value to the -1, and now you notice if you play the timeline, these particles will move now inside this volume shape. Okay, and if I increase the value to the 5, then you'll notice the particles are moving with higher speed. So this away from center, or all these values which are under the volume speed attributes, are basically the velocity multipliers. If you increase the value, the velocity of the particles will definitely going to increase. Let's make this thing 0 and move inside to the next one, which is the along axis. So along axis will going to provide you a central line of the axis, and particle will going to follow them. You can also read this attribute as follow along axis. Alright, this is not something a specific kind of XYZ axis, but it's a central line, and if you rotate your emitter, you're going to notice that now the particles are still follow along this line. So this is something shouldn't be considered with any of the XYZ axis or the directions, but it is the central line, and if you just rotate your emitter, the particle will strictly going to follow the direction of this arrow. Alright, now let's do one thing. Let's bring it back to the 0 and close this one, and let's say make the along axis value 0. Alright, now let's come on to another attribute, that is the around axis. So this attribute will going to move the particles around these, again this central line of the axis. So play the timeline and you notice by your own. This is pretty nice and really very nice, and such kind of effects are really very important also. So we can achieve this kind of a look and feel with the help of the volume emitters. Let's do one thing. Let's make them more noticeable and significant by increasing the rate to, let's say, 600. And now if you play the timeline, you can see these particles are actually moving around the central axis of this volume. Alright, you can also change the direction of the spin. You can use the clockwise as well as the anti-clockwise, and now if you use the negative value, then definitely the direction of the particles will going to be changed. So instead of now spinning in this way, which is I think earlier in the clockwise directions, now they are moving with the anti-clockwise directions. Alright, now let's do one thing. Let's explore another important attribute, that is the random directions. So this random direction will going to randomize the overall velocities of the particles, and now particles don't have any specific directions to follow. But you can use this directional speed attribute and can use this random direction in conjunction. With the help of this, you can get some nice spread. Alright, so let's do one thing. Let's bring it to the 0 and let's use the direction speed. So once you use this, you'll notice you have a arrow or a vector indicating towards the positive axis. Well, first examine that why it is happening for the x-axis only, why not for the other axis. Let's go over here and you'll find we have the distance direction attributes, and here we have the direction x. If I change the value to the 0 and use the z positive, you'll notice that now that arrow changed towards the z positive axis. And now if you play the timeline, you'll notice your particles are actually moving in a straight way. So increase the value of the direction speed from 1 to, let's say, 10, and now you notice the particles are picking up the speed, and again, because all these values are the velocities multiplied. And one more thing, guys, you can notice the particles are moving, they are moving total, straight away. What if I want to have some spread? So in that case, you can use the value of the random directions, but you can also use something like away from the center. Let's use the value 2. And now you notice as long as these particles move away from the emitter, they'll tend to get spread. But this is something which is not like that much organic, but because I can see these particles are now forming some shapes. You can also add some more randomness, so you can use this random direction attribute. So now the particles will no more able to create any specific kind of a shape, and that is something which is very, very important. So you can also increase the values, let's say 3, and play the timeline, and with this you could able to create some very nice effects. Alright, so let's take a pause over here and we'll continue with the same subject in the next clip. So see you there.